takes its toll.
And welcome back to Real Side Radio. Dave Sussman here in the chair for you tonight on a beautiful Wednesday across the fruited plain. You can find us on the Salem Radio and the GCN network. 52, but now it is 53 stations. Growing. The flagship is growing. KXLE up in Washington State. Beautiful part of the country. 1240 a.m. Welcome, everybody there in Washington State. I think this is the third radio station in the state of Washington as the ship just continues to push out. And we've got great folks, listeners like you that are joining us at realside.com, therealside.com, where the chat room is alive with fans just having a great time. And talking about having a great time, I have a great time every day with my guest coming up here, Amanda Head, who is my co-host at America's Voice Live. That's at America's Voice News. And if you're not watching that, you can download that on Roku and Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and all the streaming places that people stream. The Hollywood Conservative, and she is also the host for The Rebel, and you've seen her on Fox News. Welcome, Amanda. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. It wasn't that long ago since we chatted about some of the things we're probably going to chat about again.
Yep, you can find us 11 to 1 Pacific time. That is 2 to 4 East Coast time at America's Voice News and America's Voice Live. So, Amanda, you know, the whole process we're talking about, and my little rant before bringing you on here, is that the polls are going in the opposite direction than the Democrats were hoping for. But they're standing up there with this pious invocations to the founding fathers, you know, that democracy is at stake. And, you know, and the fact is that people are tuning out and turning off besides their base. They can't turn it around, though, can they? They've passed the Rubicon, the point of no return at this point, haven't they?
Yeah, and, you know, you speak about piety, and I just picture Nancy Pelosi up there. It's a wonder to me that she didn't try to compare our founding fathers to Catholics, because we know how much she loves to invoke her Catholic religion. But it's too far gone. They are going to have to hold the vote because they have now not only gone down the path of the impeachment inquiry, but they have now announced that they are probably going to have a vote for the end of the week. And I'm not going to get my hopes up, but can you imagine if polling was so impactful on these Democrats in red districts that they actually voted against it, and then not only did they waste all of this time and money and American taxpayer interest on impeachment, but then they lose in the House where they have the majority? It's not it's not completely inconceivable, but if those people in red districts are paying attention to polling, they might want to rethink their answer.
So here's the numbers, and I'm just going from memory here because you and we talk about this every day at America's Voice Live and America's Voice News. We're looking at 31 red districts that went blue for Congress in 2018. That's how they got back the House. Brad Pascal suggests that he already thinks he's got 18 in the bag to turn the House back red. Don't be complacent, folks. You still got to get out there and vote. But Nancy Pelosi is probably looking, and this is my memory serving right now, I don't know how good this is, maybe about 9, 10, or 11 of those seats that are really in danger, where Congress people, Democrats, are now going to town halls and people are screaming at them. She's going to give them a pass. She can only lose 18, Amanda. So if Nancy Pelosi is going to give 10 or 11 of them, quote unquote, permission, that means that she may have 7 or 8. Could you imagine the shock that she would wake up and not have those votes? How embarrassing would that be?
I know, and that's what I'm saying. It's not inconceivable. I guess the mature side of me, now the immature side of me wants to stick it to the Democrats and them be absolutely mortified and destroyed over this. The mature side of me takes a 30,000-foot view and thinks to myself, you know, the overarching thing to all of this is just how sad it is. How sad it is that they have not only dragged the president, but they've dragged members of the House of Representatives, of course, Devin Nunes, releasing or, you know, going into his phone records, but also the American people who I think are just turning it off. I had a conversation yesterday with 2 very, very left-leaning, bleeding heart liberals who, one voted for Hillary Clinton, one voted for Jill Stein, and the one who voted for Hillary Clinton voted her spouse who voted for Jill Stein. Anyway, and they just turned it off because Dave, you and I remember the days of when I first started watching the news, when I was, I don't know, 10 years old, and I started to actually moderately care about this type of stuff. And you would watch CNN because that was the mid-'90s. And, there would be numerous news stories, and there would be a continuous cycle of stories, not only American news, but from across the globe. And now it's not. It is 24/7 impeachment. It's 24/7 Trump derangement syndrome. It's 24/7 liberalism. And, who was it? Michael Savage, liberalism is a mental disorder. It is. And now they're completely consumed with it.
I want to talk to you. We're coming into our break here in just a minute or so, 2 minutes, and I want to talk to you about the media after the break as well, get some more specifics on all of this. But let me ask you this, because, when we talk about these polls that have shifted, we're seeing that there's an 8-point split now with independents. They've gone the opposite direction of Nancy and team. And and we're seeing it with African Americans. We're seeing it with Hispanics. You and I talk about this daily. And they're taking a look at the economic numbers. And as we know, the polls that have just came out with Emerson and Rasmussen are showing that a third of African Americans are now supporting this president. That's up from 8%. I think that's what voted for him. Maybe it was even 6%. So something is going wrong for the Democrats in this direction.
Yeah, and, I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine the other day regarding Brexit and Hispanics for Trump and all of these movements where we see people shifting over to the right. That's not really a new thing. After the civil rights movement, after the Civil War, we saw a lot of blacks, obviously were part of the Republican Party. And then what happened? They left. And I mean, this dates back millennia upon millennia. You think about, the Jews being led out of Egypt, and then they eventually ended up cursing their liberators. Mm-hmm. What we have to be cautious about is when we have people coming over to our side, there's got to be something that holds them there. So whether that's policy, whether that is the personality of the party, which let's face it, in the year 2020, party personality has a lot to do with it. It's why we lost, with Romney. It's why in the last 20 years or so, when we've had these Republicans who are high road Republicans who don't actually reach out to the black community and reach out to the Hispanic community and reach out to the Jewish community, we've got to make sure that when they leave the Democrat Party behind, they are not just leaving that behind to go to anything else,
right,
that we actually have something to offer them.
Right. We're going to have you stick through the break here because I want to talk about the media collapsing under this weight of impeachment and where people can find solutions to getting actual news today. We've got Amanda Head, my co-host at America's Voice Live. You can also find Amanda at The Rebel. We'll be right back here at Real Side Radio. Don't go away. Side, Dave Sussman here, guest host sitting in here at realside.com. You could follow us at realside.com and also give us a phone call at 855-732-5563 and enjoying having a discussion with my co-host on my day job over at America's Voice Live at America's Voice News, Amanda Head, the Hollywood conservative. And Amanda, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about media and Hollywood and all of this right now because, and I want to go back to somebody that you and I have both spoken with several times, and that's Molly Hemingway over at The Federalist. Yesterday on Fox News' special report, I'm just going to read a couple of quotes that she stated. And she said that the FBI and the Department of Justice knew by 2017 that the dossier was complete rubbish. Media completely disparaged the Nunes memo and completely supported the Schiff memo, and they were utterly humiliated by what came out of this report yesterday, referring obviously to the Horowitz report. Now, today, as you and I were reporting on Horowitz speaking at the Senate, we were probably, next to Fox News, one of the only media outlets out there that are actually reporting on this. CNN didn't even report on any of the Republican senators that were asking questions. They would only go to the Democrats. Let me just ask you, you're in media, you've been in media, you talk about media all the time. How bad has it gotten now for the mainstream media in regards to this and narrative and Trump?
The media, I think, used to try to hide their bias, but the cat's out of the bag. And I think that now, we know from some of those Project Veritas videos that, specifically CNN, that the order comes down from Jeff Zucker to cover Russia, and they don't bother trying to cover anything else. And I think they're kind of at the place where they have settled into this comfortable position where they don't have to hide it anymore. They don't have to cover anything with a veil of neutrality or anything like that. And it's disgusting because you look at the way that they covered the House Intelligence Committee and then the House Judiciary Committee hearings on impeachment. They covered Jerry Nadler and Adam Schiff's opening statements, top to bottom. And from what I watched, which obviously I can't watch all of it because you and I are on air, but they wasted no time and no airwaves covering that. That's important to them. It's essential to them. And then it comes to this today, and did they cover opening statements? Not a freaking chance. And I think they think that they can pull the wool over the American people's eyes. And I know that, CNN, MSNBC, they only hover around 1, 2, or 3 million viewers. So maybe that is, the 1% of America who actually buys into that and believes, they just absorb everything that those networks are telling them, and they don't bother to reach out beyond those sources. But this is why they continue to lose viewers, because they have become so brazen. But it doesn't matter, because they have airports airing their network, and they have money coming from their board, and they have bukus of money coming in from all of these different liberal directions. And it doesn't matter if they can sell the advertising or if they can get the views, because they're comfortable and they're making enough money and they're doing just fine.
A lot of folks maybe listening to this maybe haven't heard of this, but our good friends over at Project Veritas, they actually got Jeff Zucker and his minions over there to admit that this is all about impeachment. It's all about taking out President Trump. And as you said, when you were younger, I remember, I was, not to age myself, but I was in college doing Desert Storm, and we sat around, somebody's 20-inch television set, because that was a pretty big TV back in the day, watching CNN and the invasion of Baghdad in Iraq. And it was CNN. That was it. And they were the most trusted name in news because they were trusted. And you had real people, real reporters that are on there that reported both sides. It wasn't just Donald Trump, though, Amanda, that made the switch to the media. This has been going on for quite some time, right?
Yeah, they have been in the tank. Think about how they criticized George W. That's when I was I was high school at that point. And I remember how they excoriated him and just the way that they spoke about him. And I was so shocked because, and this may be the reason I love talk radio, but we were fortunate enough to grow up with both sets of grandparents nearby, so we were able to have that quality grandparent time. And all 4 of my grandparents loved to listen to talk radio, and they always had it on NPR. And the reason I know that they covered everything is because I specifically remember when the Bill Clinton impeachment hearings were happening, and they were talking about what happened in the Oval Office. And I remember my grandmother very quickly switching off the radio because I was too young to really, I wouldn't have even understood what a lot of those things were that they talked about, but she didn't want me to hear that. So that's how I know that even in the mid to late 90s, they were still relatively neutral. Maybe not late 90s, but mid 90s for sure.
Yeah. And I remember listening to Rush in the early 90s, followed by G. Gordon Liddy. Remember him on talk radio, and Michael Savage and all those guys. And I think that's where my love for talk radio came from as well. But growing up with my mom in the car, we'd listen to Michael Jackson, the South African, not the singer, and Tony Grant, the psychologist, and I was like, wow, you can do that? You can sit in front of a microphone and just talk to people and have discussions and people will listen to you? I was like, yeah. And then I saw what they were getting paid. So I decided to go in another direction. But let's talk about, where we are right now, because this divide with trust in the media, as you talk about, Fox News is by far and away the #1 cable news station. They only get 3 million viewers on a good night. There's 325 million people in the country. CNN gets 600,000 and their numbers are going down. So where does the media go? I know you and I have or an alternative channel, but talk about what you see happening right now in media and the future.
You ask where do they go? I don't think they go anywhere. especially now. I think that people, we're gearing up for the holidays. It's these kitchen table topics that most Americans care about. It's the fact that for Thanksgiving they could get a turkey and a ham. For Christmas they can buy their kids an extra present, or they can fill their stocking with better stuff other than crap they buy at the dollar store. Those are the types of things that people notice throughout the year, but particularly at the end of the year. And those are the types of things that people care about. They don't care what the House Committee on Oversight is saying about so-and-so, so-and-so. They don't care what, how many drafts had to go through the Office of Management and Budget. They don't care about those types of things. And we're news junkies. We obviously have our particular media venues that we like to go through. But today, you and I were talking about the Time magazine cover with this Greta. And I was I was literally, as we were on break, I was Googling Time magazine cover generator, and there is a website, imgflip.com, where you can generate your own Time Person of the Year cover. And I'm sitting here thinking, how many people do that just as a joke? But how many of those people actually would be a better Time Person of the Year than Greta Thunberg? But the media is selling this crap. And look, on the topic of climate change and global warming and all this stuff, 2 days ago, we covered Steve Harvey asking the question of the Miss Universe pageant, and he rolls his eyes about a question about climate change. That right there, I will tell you, that is the most demonstrable, visual example of how the American people feel about this type of crap.
Yeah, and folks, if you want to find that we put that up on Whiskey Politics a couple of days ago. Amanda, 2 hours a day just isn't enough because I'm having so much more fun with you on the radio here tonight. Tell everybody where folks can find you, obviously at America's Voice News, but outside of that as well.
Yes, go to my website, thehollywoodconservative.us, and I'm on Twitter at Amanda Head.
Awesome. And listen, I got to tell you, folks, I couldn't ask for a better co-host to do this show with on a daily basis at America's Voice Live. She is articulate. She's very easy on the eyes. She knows what's going on, and it's just it's a fountain of information and knowledge. So not to be too self-serving for me, but folks, follow Amanda Head and check in with us at America's Voice Live every single day from 11 to 1. And you can find that on America's Voice News on Roku and download it on Apple TV and everything else as well. And I will be seeing you tomorrow morning, bright and early, in pre-production. So thanks so much for joining me.
All right. Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks so much. I greatly appreciate it. And folks, we're going to be back here after the break. We're going to talk a lot more about media and everything else that is just, I don't know about you guys, but the whole discussion for the past couple of months has been cancerous. I think it's cancerous on the American body politic. And we're going to talk about some of these poll numbers and everything else that the Democrats, I think, sometimes you shouldn't wish for the things that you're going to get, because when you get them, you might turn around and realize that you didn't want them to begin with. And we're going to talk about reasons why after the break. Don't go away, folks. Dave Sussman here at Real Side Radio. We'll be back after these commercials.